Welcome back to Blumira Briefings, your weekly download of the top headlines and trends for your security practice. This week, we've got a hefty Patch Tuesday with 0 days in play, a fake 7-zip site that was actually just proxyware in a trench coat, and ransomware groups getting old school. Let's get into it. First up, Microsoft's Patch Tuesday dropped with a fix for 59 vulnerabilities, including 6 criticals and some known exploited bugs. All the greatest hits are here: Windows Shell, MS-HTML, Microsoft Word, Windows Desktop Manager, RDP, and RDS. Your risks are going to run all the way up to system-level privilege escalation and remote code execution. There's nothing new I can say here other than it is the year 2020-6, and we're still having this conversation. Patch Windows devices right away, especially when AI is taking research to exploited bugs faster than ever. But that's enough about Copilot. Let's talk about domain impersonation and the .com assumption. A malicious site used 7zip.com instead of the actual .org to drop Trojanized installers that actually worked while converting the machine into a residential proxy node in the background. Jake, what are some practical ways that organizations can prevent this type of attack and protect themselves against domain impersonation?
Yeah, these fake installers are super common and very effective as an initial access method for attackers. This week we're talking about 7-zip. Next week we'll be talking about advanced IP scanner. The week after that, maybe manage engine. Long story short is this is an attack that's used all the time, and it's used for all sorts of different executables. So the thing to focus on is not 7-zip itself, but just that these fake installers are used all over the place as lures to bait people into installing this fake stuff. Some things you can do to protect yourself and keep these installers from getting on your machine is just keeping an eye out for funny looking or misspelled domains. If you're doing a search for a tool, just kind of look out for the domain that you would expect for that tool. You might not know what you're looking for necessarily, but also something to keep in mind when you're searching, just go past the first few results. Those are typically ads or sponsored results. Attackers pay for those spots and they optimize those pages so that they are put above the actual legitimate page. So just when you're searching, keep in mind to go past the first few results and try to keep an eye out for the legitimate site or what you'd expect to be a legitimate site. Or another thing to consider is using DNS filtering services. That can help prevent these results from coming up. And you can also use things like ad blockers. I personally was trying to access this 7-zip site just to check it out before I started digging into what was going on and found that my ad blocker was actually preventing me from getting into the site to begin with. So an ad blocker, DNS filtering services, these can all stop people from even getting to the site itself. So those are things to consider. Train your coworkers to spot the differences for some of these sites, or even just letting them know that attackers use this kind of technique can go a long way, because a lot of times people don't even know that attackers use fake installers, that they use these kind of tactics. So just kind of sharing the word, letting people know that this kind of technique is used to install malware is a great first step. If you're downloading the same tool all the time, consider bookmarking it. I know that in the past, if I'm downloading the same tool all the time, I may not always think or look at what link I'm clicking. And sometimes you can mess up and click the wrong one. So if you're just using the same thing over and over again, consider bookmarking it so you're just accessing the same one. It's kind of like a speed dial. When you're on the phone with somebody, you want to call them again in the future and not have to dial their phone number and maybe get it wrong. You put them in as a contact, you put them in speed dial, and that way you're not guessing. You're just hitting the same link over and over again. It's important too to note for this attack that the attackers didn't go straight for the jugular on this one. They didn't do any kind of ransomware. They didn't do anything that would make them pop up on anybody's radar. They just installed that stealthy residential proxy, and that's going to let them pass traffic through your network on their way to do other nefarious activity. So the goals aren't always ransomware or extortion. Sometimes the goals are to be quiet, stealthy, not do anything that's going to raise any alarms so that they can get away with this kind of stuff. So I just want to kind of get that out there so people aren't always thinking that the objective is always ransomware and that you will always know when somebody's on your network.
So remember, Ransomware isn't the only end goal worth worrying about. Turning compromised devices into proxy infrastructure is another business model, and one that's better at flying under the radar than other, louder, more widely known malware. Speaking of ransomware, some groups may be pivoting back to good old-fashioned encryption as extortion campaigns start to fall flat. As word spreads that paying the ransom won't prevent legal consequences and definitely doesn't guarantee that your data won't get exposed anyway, attackers are going back to what better forces businesses' hands. To paraphrase Mike Tyson, everybody's got a plan until they get hit with a business disruption. Mike, Tool, not Tyson, what does this mean for defenders?
So this is an interesting trend that I kind of was wondering if it would come back. People are starting to move back more into, encryption, traditional ransomware, business disruption versus data theft, and then trying to sell it or sell it back. It's kind of funny. You have to look at like where this all came from originally, and why the move shifted more into data theft, which around the 2022, 2023 timeline, it was very rampant. People were, it was a main business source for most of the gangs. And there was a lot of heat on all of them. If you look back through like some of the news articles, you'd see like gangs were getting taken down. Half of them were getting rolled up, and then they'd reform into other gangs, and nation states were coming after them, disrupting their infrastructure, all sorts of stuff. And a lot of it just came from the fact that data encryption and ransomware was so effective. It was also incredibly disruptive, and they were going after probably targets that made way too much heat on them for from law enforcement. We're talking like hospitals. Like there's tons of stories about some terrible things that happened because an organization that probably shouldn't have been targeted was accidentally targeted or purposefully targeted, or no one cared and they just went after everyone. But you had critical business and critical services disrupted as part of the process, and that was just their play. So a lot of them decided, hey, we should probably chill out, take some heat off. We'll just do data theft because it's less disruptive to the businesses. Therefore, law enforcement won't come out after us as much. And that was pretty successful in tamping down like some of the pressure against the different crews. However, the ROI was not even close. Like, there's a reason why encrypting systems and ransomware is so effective in getting paid. It's because it's very disruptive. A lot of these crews have found is like you steal data from a company. Some people care, some people don't. Some people, if it doesn't affect their bottom line, they might try to make the decision between paying a fine or paying the crews. And sometimes the fine is less, sometimes it brings the total dollar amount down. I remember this very vividly when it all started happening. Was like, okay, great, you've stolen my data, it's encrypted somewhere on the dark web. You posted like a sample set. Now I pay you and I'm trusting you to delete it. Right? So like the reason I'm paying you is so that you delete it from the dark web. Um, but I don't think the trustworthiness of these ransomware crews extends that far into their business models. And, whereas with encryption, um, if they got a reputation of like, oh, well, if you pay them, you won't be able to, their encryption keys won't work, the payments just immediately stop. So, like, the second someone does the math on like, how do I know if the data's actually gone? That's an exercise in is it actually worth what they're asking for? So it's kind of like a weird business incentive, but also, it's just the ROI is like so much less. Um, it's just less there. So yeah, I'm not necessarily excited. We're headed back towards ransomware encryption because it is very disruptive. Um, I think it's going to be something we have to deal with, and it will, like the rate of data theft hasn't gone down compared to like companies that were getting encryption ransomware. So I think we'll just be moving back into a more disruptive state, and the same thing's going to happen where there's a lag for law enforcement to start having operations to take these people down and data sharing and all the things that happened last time. But it's just kind of feels very cyclical at this point.
So, to put it poetically, this week brought us a lot of Windows to patch, a copycat site with a proxy attached, and ransomware groups that have doubling back. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and questions in the comments, and I'll see you next week with more updates. Until then, stay safe out there.